Hello there. Welcome to this episode of Force Ghost Conversations. This is your host, Anthony King, and this week I'm joined by Jessica from the Tales of the Force podcast for part 4 of our 20th anniversary celebration of Star Wars Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith. If you're a fan of the podcast and would like to consider pledging your support, there will be a link in the episode description for you to check out the various tiers offered. Also, please be sure to check out our TeePublic store to buy some Force Ghost Conversations merchandise. And without further ado, it is time to gather around the campfire for some Force Ghost conversations. Welcome back to another installment of the podcast, everybody. It's still 20th anniversary season for Revenge of the Sith here. And obviously, we're still continuing our celebration of that. And by doing so, we are continuing these conversations that we've been having. You may recall, I think prior to Star Wars Celebration, we had a series of about 3 or so, with some wonderful guests. And we've got a few more in the pipeline that we recorded for you all. And thrilled to get into this conversation here with Jessica from Tales of the Force podcast, a wonderful show. Just some great conversation bits, insights into the movie from her perspective, and just an all-around good time. So this is usually the time of the podcast where I would talk about like the news and things that have taken place in the Lucasfilm and Star Wars adjacent galaxy, but unfortunately, there really isn't a whole lot at this point. Star Wars Andor season 2 has concluded, and we're kind of in that lull period in between things before they start ramping up for some other things. I know that the Trials of the Jedi, the final story of the adult line of the High Republic, is coming out in just a few weeks, so be on the lookout for that. But otherwise, we are just kind of trudging along as we go here, and as anything else pops up, we'll be sure to report on it here. But until then, nothing major in the Star Wars and Lucasfilm adjacent galaxy before we head into our main topic here. So without further ado, let's get into that. And on the other side of the short break, we'll be back with our conversation about Star Wars Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith with Jessica. Stay tuned. All right, folks, welcome back to another installment of Force Ghost Conversations. You might have suspected what this episode is going to be all about because we are continuing our celebration of the 20th anniversary of Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. And like I've told you folks, this film is near and dear to my heart. It is my favorite Star Wars film of the bunch. And I'm just thrilled. It's crazy to say again that we're at 20 years. Where did the time go? I don't know. But we are here to continue our celebratory conversations. And of course, we have a guest here today. And I'm so thrilled to welcome back to the show. We have Jessica from Tales of the Force podcast. Jessica, how are you doing? And welcome back to Force Ghost Conversations.
Hello there.
Hello there indeed, General Kenobi.
Yes, the correct response, right?
The only response, in my opinion, other than just like whatever beeps R2 makes when he's, in a New Hope. But for us prequel kids, that was the hello there, General Kenobi. Yes, that is the proper way to, I feel like a celebration. That should be like everyone's like, hello, how are you? Hello there, General Kenobi. Hello there, General Kenobi.
It'll be constant, the whole time. Everyone will, I don't know, maybe people will be saying it. And then everyone's like, may the Force be with you. And people are like, and with you. Wait,
and also with
is that
you,
what we say?
I mean, it's basically church. Star Wars is a religion in some ways, both the Force and just Star Wars at large is like a religion in some ways. So yes, both are appropriate responses. No one knows what to say afterwards.
No one, but you figure it out. You do what you can.
Yeah, certainly. And I hope that, with it being the 20th anniversary and there is some merchandise and some actors there related to Revenge of the Sith at Celebration, I hope that people use that as the opportunity to maybe greet each other with a hello there and a General Kenobi in Japan. I think that's a valid greeting for each other.
I think it's always a good one. So
also, who needs a time and place? You're right. Keep it going all the time.
Yeah, just find the Star Wars fans, just when you meet someone new, just be like, hello there, and then see what they say.
That's the true test to know if they like pass, like, are they nerd cred or not? Do they have it? Are they normies? Do they just watch it once? It's a deep cut. So hopefully if they get the gist, then you can like say like, oh yeah, Max Rebo is so cool. And then they'll probably know what you're talking about.
What is Max Rebo,
Yeah, exactly. He's just a wild guy,
A little
and
blue elephant.
little blue guy with his flippers, just playing some jazz, in Jabba's palace and having a great time. Survives
Yes.
all the way to Book of Boba Fett, and I think still survives after that too. I'm gonna manifest
He
that.
never dies.
He
We're
never
gonna say he
dies.
lives forever.
He just keeps going. The
Yes.
music never dies too. So he just
Never
keeps
dies.
going. Yeah. Well, Jessica, we are here to celebrate Star Wars Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith. Like I said in the preamble, it's a film that's near and dear to my heart. And I'm excited to, over the course of this episode here, to chat about your experiences with this movie and your thoughts and opinions on it. And to start, I want to go back to 2005. We're 20 years later right now in 2025, but we got to go back to the beginning. So in the months leading up to May 2025 when this film was released, what was the anticipation level like for you? What was it like at that time? How are you looking forward to this film, or perhaps maybe even not looking forward to this? I don't know. Tell me, what was it like in 2005 for you?
Well, I was 15, I think,
Perfect.
almost 16 at the
Okay.
time. A teenage girl. And I've kind of talked about this a little bit before. I some of my friends knew that I liked Star Wars, but
Mm-hmm.
not all of them
Okay.
because I was already kind of a weird punk kid, I guess, in high school. And
Sure.
so I was like, why add anything else, to that list? Um,
Just add
and
another ism
so
to my running list here.
yes, but I always watched like all my friends like that were guys and they had lightsabers and they would play all these lightsaber battles and
Mm-hmm.
reenact things. And I'm like, man, I want to do that. And it wasn't that I thought it was too cool. I was just like, I don't know, can girls do that too? Which now we
Mm.
know obviously they can,
Yeah,
but
100%. And you could have
back in
then too, but
2005. Yeah.
it
Yeah,
was
it
a hard
wasn't
conversation of like what are the appropriate roles for this.
right.
Yeah.
For sure. And I had spent, the years leading up to that, you know, I love Padme. I mean, obviously I love Leia, but
Mhm.
it Padme was just like such a cool character and as a girl kind of growing up with her, knowing that, Leia was going to be her daughter, it just made her even cooler to me because I
Yeah.
was like, "Oh my gosh, she's Leia's mom." And I see all these things that she gets from her and also from Anakin too, but at
Mhm.
the time I saw a lot of what Leia would become from her. And so um just kind of seeing like how it would kind of end up because we knew from watching the originals, we kind of knew what was coming
Mhm. Yes.
with the story, but kind of how that was all going to be fleshed out, I guess, on screen.
Sure.
And so I was super excited for it. And, super excited to see how everything went. I mean, knew obviously it was going to be hard and sad.
Yeah.
not like,
Yeah.
not the ending that we want, we
Mhm.
get that later. But um, yeah, I was just excited to see, Natalie Portman play Padme again, to see
Mhm.
Hayden play Anakin and Ewan play, play Obi-Wan and, just all the things. I was excited about all the things. And so my anticipation was pretty high. It just was kind of like a hidden anticipation. Not necessarily intentionally, but I just don't think people thought about really talking to me that much about it. So,
Yeah, I
yeah.
mean, it was a tough time for it was that weird era where thankfully I would say like 2012 and beyond, like it became more acceptable to be a nerd, just
Yeah.
openly and outright, like to wear a Star Wars shirt post that time frame meant people were like celebrating it, versus when like in 2003, 2004, 2005 I was getting bullied by wearing a Star Wars shirt by people much older than me, that you'd be like,
Yeah.
wow, you're a 35-year-old man, why are you yelling at a kid for liking something like.
If I saw a kid, which I do see kids in Star Wars stuff, I always compliment their shirt or tell them
Mm-hmm.
how cool it is, or, if I have time, ask them what, who their favorite character is or something like that. So it's just wild to me that a generation before us wouldn't have done that for us as kids, I mean, unless they were just really nerdy and didn't care. Um,
Yeah.
you know?
It's wild that like there is almost a generation of Star Wars fans that almost ruined Star Wars for everyone. like by hating the prequels by a large degree, and then by almost kicking George. Like George was like, I'm done, I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like belittling other fans and making people like not want to either talk about it or feel welcome to sharing how they feel about things, or like, to even bullying kids and other kids for liking something. And it's like, wow, you guys really liked it so much that you squeezed it to the point that no one else can have it, right? It's almost like Anakin, you're with me or you're my enemy, to
Yeah.
kind of quote this movie to some degree. But it's like, wow,
Yeah.
that was kind of the approach that some people were actually having back then, and
I
thankfully we're
know.
beyond that.
It's sad to see that kind of coming back a little bit too,
Oh
which I
yeah.
know, with the sequels, and it's sad because there's so many kids that now are growing up and they're loving Star Wars
Yeah.
because of of the sequels, and it's okay if people don't like them. I'll always say that. It's okay if you don't like a movie, even a Star Wars movie or a Star Wars project, but it's like
Hmm.
don't do what you've said was either done to you or you saw done to someone else. It's just like you can say you don't like something, you can critique something in a respectful way, and it not be like bullying or just harsh or hateful or that sort of thing, you know.
Yeah, it's a
I
choice to
don't know.
bully,
Yeah.
like they didn't have to comment, they didn't
Yeah.
have to respond, they could have just let, like, me existing didn't intrude on their day, for
Yeah.
example.
Yeah.
And it's sad, like, I agree with you that it has seen somewhat of a resurgence lately. You talked briefly a second ago here about how Padme was an important character to you growing
Mhm.
up, and in a way, because you were growing up with these films, these were, I would argue, and perhaps your Star Wars, right, to some degree. Like, you saw them in the theater, that was kind of like a big moment for you, and these characters, you resonated with them, and you're excited to see the conclusion of that story with these characters in 2005. But for kids growing up in like 2015, that era with the sequel trilogy, like Ray, I assume, was like their big,
Yeah.
like, character that was like, oh, I can be a Jedi, I can be at the forefront of the story, I can do all this. And now people are rebelling against that. Like, oh, another female-led property. Oh no, like, oh, give me the female-led properties. It's
Yeah.
awesome. Like, it's we should celebrate this. These are not bad things, guys.
Yeah.
And in fact, I see this resurgence of people uplifting the prequel trilogy, which I know back in the day they were not celebrating, and they're using to like celebrate those films as a means to downplay the sequel trilogy, which really makes me sad, instead of just celebrating all of the goodness that is Star Wars, or at least picking up the pieces. Because I'm sure, even if even in the best, like, people that are like, I hate this film, there's nothing, like, I'm sure if they really sat down, they'd be able to be like, okay, I like that sequence. Right. That's how a lot of people, in my opinion, like, that now in good faith celebrate the prequels. They sat down, they're like, oh, I actually like this thing, I like the explosion that happens when Jango Fett tries to take out Obi-Wan when he's going to Geonosis, or I like that detective subplot in that Attack of the Clones film, or, man, that Anakin Obi-Wan duel is really great as time goes on. The Darth Plagueis scene. It's like, people, there's something good in all this stuff for everybody as time goes on, and that's mainly why I think why it's so awesome to celebrate these
Yeah.
great grand anniversaries that we have with
Yeah.
these films. Um, so I think this is, like I said, an awesome film. I was 10 at the time that this came out, so like target age for this movie. I was ripe and ready for this. George was
Oh, for
like,
sure.
he's like, Star Wars is for 12-year-olds, and the 12-year-old within all of us. I'm like, that was
Yes.
me back in the
Yes.
day. I couldn't, I couldn't be more excited for this movie. I was like begging for the trailer to come out. I went to see the, I don't remember what movie that the trailer appeared with, that like when they first, when before the internet, folks, when you had to go to the movie theaters to see when new trailers came out, because it
Yes.
was, internet speeds were not as good as they were back then. You
Yes.
had to go to, sometimes, to the cinema first to see a new trailer come out. So I went whatever movie that was that they first premiered it with, and then watched the trailer and then watched the movie. I don't remember. Obviously, it wasn't that great, because I'm not like singing to the hills about how awesome that other movie was. So that was where I was at. Battlefront, the video games had just come out, and I was super into all those with my friends. The DVD special editions had come out, and there was some Revenge of the Sith behind the scenes features on those bonus features on the DVD set, which really propelled my love of this franchise, but also my interest in this movie specifically. Star Wars kind of made sense for me as a story in around 2004, so just in the perfect lead up time to this, where before then I never really connected that the original trilogy and the prequels were like connected films.
Yeah.
I thought like the original trilogy was just like older Star Wars, and this is a new reboot, just kind of in the same sandbox. But then my uncle had to sit me down one day and was like, "You know that guy you like in Attack of the Clones? Like he becomes that villain guy in the other ones." I was like, "No, you're wrong. This is not possible. You're crazy. That's not
Yeah.
real." And then of course with the DVD release and seeing Hayden at the end of Return of the Jedi, I was like, "Oh no, he was right. He wasn't kidding."
Yeah.
It really blew my mind. But yeah, for me, this was top tier entertainment. Like I had to go see it opening night. I had to be there. I had to be part of this zeitgeist moment. And frankly, it's one of the first times I can really remember like a need to be there, to be a part of this moment. That there was such a movement going on surrounding this, and I recognized that like this was a big moment because it concluded the end of the saga as we know it. And yeah, I was super on board for all this too. So the internet was still in its infancy at the time of the release of this movie. Well, infancy compared to now. Let's just say that we were all on AIM and MySpace. Folks, listen. If kids at home, if you haven't heard of these things, look it up. I just still ask my parents' permission before going online at that time. So different time frame for where we are now, where kids just have smartphones at the age of 8, or they know how to navigate an iPad better than I could ever in my
Yes.
lifetime.
And the
So
awful dial-up sound, all the
oh
things.
my gosh. Woof. I know I'm a little bit nostalgic for it, I'll be honest, and like some of those like Nokia ringtones back in
Oh
the
my
day.
gosh,
Oh,
yes.
wow.
I
What a
had one of
time to
those
be
brick
alive.
phones. You could throw it and it would, like,
It never
never
broke.
die.
That's right, but now you drop an iPhone these days, and they're intended to. I will say, I feel like they're intended to break, just so you have to get another one. Upgrade to the next one. I get a text every 2 days to be like, "Hey, you can upgrade your iPhone." I'm like, "No, I'm pretty happy
Yes.
with my home button. I'll keep it." So, how did you first hear about the title "Revenge of the Sith"? What did you think of the title then? Have your feelings changed about the title since then? What do you think about that title?
Um, I think to me, I just was I heard about everything probably just from friends and
Hmm.
seeing stuff, people talking about stuff if it was on MySpace or whatever. It wasn't like social media was so different, but
Yeah.
you would see a trailer like you were talking about, like in the cinema or on TV before it would come
Hmm.
out. And so it was that kind of thing. And then, hearing people talk about it and talking about it. But, I think because I was a little bit older
Hmm.
when it came out. And so I did know, I did understand a little bit more. I think at that age, obviously, I mean, I understood that, this is where it's going and
Yeah.
Anakin's gonna have to turn. And, we didn't really know, I think, if Padme was gonna live or not because of
True.
that line in Return of the Jedi about, Leia remembering her mother.
Hmm.
So we weren't really sure, what was gonna happen with her and all of that. But, um, I knew that it was gonna be where the dark side would be stronger and, the Sith would be coming back because of what happens in A New Hope. And
Yeah.
so I didn't really have, like, any negative thoughts about the
Hmm.
title
Hmm.
or, any really, like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so excited about it," either. It was just like, "Oh, this is the next movie, this is what it's called, like, we know where it's going." And, um, so yeah, it seemed to work with, the last one being Return of the Jedi, and so
Sure.
this being, like, Revenge of the Sith. It seemed to kind of be like, I don't know, like how Lucas says it's poetry, it
A
kinda
nice
rhymed a little
parallel.
bit.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it totally. You're absolutely right. I'm gonna yes and you on that one because it's in the title. A New Hope is very plucky, and that's very much in the vein of this uplifting movie that is very much needed after this movie in terms of like the watching the chronology of it all.
yeah.
Even if you add Rogue One in there too, or even like a Solo or Kenobi, like you need that New Hope afterwards, that uplifting film afterwards. It definitely is not like your expectation of don't go into this expecting it to be like happiest tale at the end of all of this here. Like, it's very dark. There are a lot of dark things and traumatic things, frankly, that happen within this film that, like, wow. 10-year-old me 20 years later is like, wow, I can't believe I was allowed to see that in the theater at that time. Like, there's a lot of traumatic things. We'll get into a few of those over the course of this discussion here.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think the title just rocks. I remember just, throwing my double horns up after seeing it the first time and being like, yep, we're in it. We're in the end game here. We're gonna rock and roll with this one. So, Jessica, I will share a little bit of my lore here when it comes to this movie.
Yeah.
Listeners, you know this by this point of the series that we've been doing here, but Jessica, you have not been privy to the story yet. So, in 2004, like I was saying, this is where I was really getting to my onus about understanding Star Wars and it becoming like this very much injected in my veins kind of thing, part of my life. In 2004, after a watch of the DVD special edition release at my uncle's place, I had, I think he was taking a nap or he was watching another show. He's probably watching Star Trek, and I did not care for Star Trek, and I don't necessarily have much fondness for it nowadays still. But I when that was on, that was my cue to go to the computer and do whatever I wanted for as long as I wanted until he was done with that. So when that happened, I went over to the computer and I was like, I wonder if there's anything in the internet about the next upcoming Star Wars film. So I just Google like Star Wars Episode 3 information. And about, 10 pages into that Google search, I come across a full script that's online of this movie in 2004. So I knew just about everything that was happening. So the title was right there, Star Wars Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith. Just about everything that happens within this movie, verbatim for how it happens in the movie itself that you finally see in May 2005. Like, I knew all about it. So I did my absolute best to keep the spoilers from getting out to my friends and family members that were interested in it. But because there's also like, I don't know if I can trust this to be accurate or not, so I have to see it for the first time to like ultimately tell if everything is accurate here. But ultimately, once I saw like the opening space battle and all that stuff, and then started to hear like exact dialogue exactly as it was from that reading, I was like, oh, yep, it was on point. I knew exactly everything here. I was, I wasn't, and it wasn't a bad thing either. Like, I loved that. I loved seeing that. I loved hearing that. I loved being able to have that experience and then to experience it again in the theater. It just is such a cool thing that I'm able to now share with folks that was the thing. But can you imagine like nowadays if a full script leaks
Oh my
online?
gosh.
Like, that's like, we live in such a spoiler culture nowadays where if like a cameo is spoiled in a trailer 3 weeks before a movie comes out, people are like, the movie is ruined for me. Negative review. I expected. Everything was like predictable. I couldn't imagine this movie. I my imagination is ruined for this thing. And basically, to that, I say, folks, if you are spoiled to something, it doesn't mean it's the end of the world. It just means like,
Yeah.
you just get to contextualize it in a different way. And maybe that was intended for you to see, but also if you know the entirety of the story, just see how it executes on screen, and then you never know how it's going to work out. But that's
Yeah.
how I was first, in a way, privy to the title Star Wars Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith. And from that point on, I was like, I'm game in to this thing. This thing rocks. I can't wait to see how this
Oh.
plays out on screen.
Yeah, it is different. It's different reading it than seeing it too. I mean, it wouldn't be any different than like reading a book and then
Mm-hmm.
seeing it, like,
Absolutely. Same deal. That's
yeah.
right.
Oh my
So,
gosh, I can't imagine like today, like the internet
could you
frenzy
imagine?
of, something like that being released and it being out there, the lawsuits, the drama,
Yeah, who would get fired?
yeah, like who screenshots it before it gets taken down,
Mm-hmm.
like, oh my gosh, that would be insane.
It's absolutely unheard of in today's age. Like, people are signing NDAs. But also, this is a great message to whoever's listening. If anyone's listening out there, I'm great with secrets. I'll keep. I'm good. I'm game to go. You can
Yeah.
trust me.
You
So
can trust me, I'm
Lucasfilm,
not gonna tell
if
anybody.
you need, yeah, Lucasfilm, if you want to drop some knowledge, I'll happily keep that secret for you all. If you're listening. Um,
Yeah.
but so for your first viewing of the movie, so let's take us to, I think, May 9th, 2005, I think was the opening date. Well, did you see it on opening day? What was your first experience like of seeing the movie? Where did you see it? Who did you see it with? What were your initial reactions? Take us to that first time.
Yeah, I saw all of them. I've seen every Star Wars movie except the originals. Well, I did see the re-release for
Okay,
the anniversary of Return of the Jedi with my dad
awesome.
in theaters, but every new Star Wars movie that has come
Yeah,
out, I have seen with my parents at
nice.
least once in theaters. And so Revenge of the Sith, I think because I was a little bit older, I probably saw it with them first, and then I'm sure I saw it with friends after. And so I mean, I grew up in Little Rock, and
Hmm.
so there was a lot of different places that you could go see them, and I think some of my friends had different opinions on the different ones, and
Yeah,
my parents was probably like whatever was close, and then like my friends was probably like whatever the new cool theater was at the time.
yeah.
And so it's interesting because there is a theater that's still there. It's named something different, but when I was in high school, it was like the cool new thing to go to
Mm.
this theater. It had like an arcade, it had IMAX, it had, everyone wanted to do like Dance Dance Revolution and
Oh,
play that, all
I
the
still want to
things.
play. Like, if I see that, I'm going for it.
Yeah, I mean, it was just like peak 2000s movie theater,
Oh, I love it.
and
Was the pod race like game there too? Like, our
um
theater had that back in the day, and I
I
hope
don't
it
think
still
it
does.
had that, but, it had all the cool LED lights, and it had, the
Mm.
newest surround sound, and it had, all the cool things, and so some of my fondest memories of seeing movies would be there. It was called The Rave at the time, it's not called that anymore, but, I mean, I saw Finding Nemo in that theater, and I remember
Nice.
seeing that there. I saw, a lot of Star Wars movies there. I did end up being able to go back and see The Last Jedi there, which was really fun.
Awesome.
While my parents still lived in that area, I did get to go and see that there, which was it was very, nostalgic to see another Star
Yeah.
Wars movie in that
A full
theater.
circle moment. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it was fun to do that, but so I'm sure I definitely saw it there as
Mhm,
well,
mhm.
and so that was really fun to get to do. I mean, I remember all the big movies pretty much I saw in that theater, I had went to my first midnight release there, which was
Ooh.
Return of the King, different
Oh, as you
fandom,
should,
but
as you should. That's right.
first time to fully cosplay and wear a costume to something was for Return of the King. I saw the Pirates of the Caribbean movies there.
Great.
So yeah, just another classic, amazing Star Wars movie, Return of the Sith, Revenge of the Sith. Sorry, another classic
Well,
Star Wars
from a
movie,
certain point of view, Return of the
Revenge of the
Sith.
Sith.
If you ask Palpatine, he'd be like, "Call it
um,
Return of the Sith. I'll take it."
would be another great movie that I saw in that movie theater. So I have so many fond memories, like I've said, with hanging out with friends, going there and seeing movies. So yeah, just a fun time to see it. Um, I think going to the theaters was bigger than it
It
is
certainly
now.
was. Yeah.
It was a thing that you just did. So yeah, yeah, it was a good time seeing it, and I definitely saw it more than once. So
That was a peak 2005 experience
it
right here.
was.
I love it. You bring up fond memories for myself too. Like, that was a Friday night thing back then. Like, that was the thing
Yeah.
to do, and a similar. I grew up in it sounds like a similar community, where, like, go with your friends to whatever coming out. Disturbia with Shia LaBeouf is out this weekend. Let's go check it out, guys.
Yeah, I think I saw that there too, probably. I saw Holes there
As
talking
you
about
should.
him,
That's
I
right.
mean, oh my goodness. I feel like one of the things we did as a family, we would always go on Thanksgiving afternoon to the movies.
Also, as you should.
Yeah, and so we that's where we went to a lot of them. What was there that I really remember.
I love that traditional off the like, just by telling me now, I couldn't think of anything better than having lunch and this big meal and then just like lounging in a chair for 2.5 hours in a dark theater and watching whatever new release came out. Like that sounds perfect.
Yes, and then you got to hear like, see all not hear, see all the previews for what was coming out for Christmas,
Hmm.
all the movies that would come out around that time, and yeah, come on, let's bring back going to the movies, people, like, what an
I,
experience, so
I'm all
fun.
for it. I'm all for it. Come on. No strict no texting policy, no phones, none of that. Just dark room and just vibing with the sound system and the projection in front of you. Oh man, bring me back. Take me back,
Yeah,
folks.
yeah.
So what was your like? You saw the film. What were your like? Would it blow you away? Were you like, this is everything I wanted it to be? The saga's complete. What do
I
you remember
mean,
how you felt
yeah,
afterwards?
I loved it. I remember being, as usual, obsessed with all of Padme's different outfits.
I think that's fair, as you should.
Yeah, fashion has been a big part of my life,
Hmm.
and expressing myself through what I wear, especially as a teenager, was a big thing, and through college, kind of getting back into that as an adult,
Hmm.
but it is an art form, picking out what you're gonna wear and doing different things. I mean, I'm thinking about right now, like preparing for Japan. One of my biggest things is like, what am I gonna wear every day?
It's a big
Like
question.
it's got to be planned out. So having that aspect in, I mean, Leia had incredible outfits, but there was another level with Padme.
Hmm.
Her being a queen and then a senator. She had a whole, not department, but she had a whole team, that
Exactly.
was, dressing her and doing all this stuff. And I loved seeing that, and how her hair was different and how everything would look different. Her makeup could be different. And so I loved being able to see, how that would be, especially as she was pregnant,
Yeah.
And so I loved seeing that, and I loved, obviously, the fight. That is the big thing that everyone's quoting and everyone's reenacting as a kid, and even some adults,
Hmm.
and um memorizing the lines and people quoting it back and forth. And
Yep.
um, I mean, YouTube was kind of in its infancy at the
It sure
time,
was.
and so, seeing people do all the different things and spoofing different stuff or whatever, at the time.
Yeah.
And IMDb, looking up all the pictures from,
Hmm.
the set and stuff like that on there, seeing what any of the actors are we're going to be doing next, just the 2000 stuff that you did. Um
Getting the magazines and all that. And
Yes. I was one of the kids, one of the teenagers that would print off, I remember one of my friends specifically, we would scour the internet for pictures of different things, and we would cut them all out, and we would make these collages, and
oh,
we would cover books or notebooks with, all this stuff.
you were
And
scrapbooking.
basically, but it was kinda like, I don't know, kinda emo, kinda punk looking,
I
you would cut
love it.
out the letters from the magazines, and it would, you see stuff like that it's very stylized now, but at the time, it was organic.
Sounds
It
like a great
wasn't.
Friday night. I
Yeah.
like I can imagine the Star Wars being on in the background while you're doing all this or whatever
Yeah,
film you have
yeah.
on. I just fly on the wall. That sounds awesome.
Yeah, loved it. But, just like watching it, the music obviously was a huge part of it. That score is
Hmm.
incredible. But yeah, loved the movie. Wanted to see it again. Wanted to be able to quote it. Wanted to be able to talk to all my friends about it. So,
Yeah.
yeah, definitely was a huge thing.
That's awesome. I'm glad you had a wonderful experience with it, and then you also love the movie too. Like I think that's a big one. Like we definitely having a different conversation if you're like, I saw it and then it just really let me down. Like, oh, okay,
Yeah,
well,
no.
all right, let's chat about that and the why. But it's always better when you get to celebrate the things that we like, and it's more fun to do so. I think it's no surprise that I saw this film on opening night and absolutely
Yeah.
adored it and loved it, even knowing once it was confirmed that I knew everything that was going to happen into it. Like I knew Mace Windu was going to get his hand chopped off. I knew he was going to get thrown out. I knew the whole Plagueis. Like that was exactly as written. It played out. Um, now I will say the things that like were the most exciting for me is that in a script, as much like a book too, action isn't really written too well. So like the whole Anakin Obi-Wan would be like Anakin Obi-Wan fight. And then it would get to the end talking points where they just like have a few lines of dialogue intermittently. So like all that was like just my imagination. So then it was really seeing that as it played out, which I think was like so cool to like check in if like my mind was like vibing with exactly how it was played out on screen. And also I just like also sat back and let George surprise me with what his take was going to be for that. So I think that was just so utterly cool at the time. And just like I saw it, like I said, that opening night of May 9th, 7 o'clock p.m. Movie E Town, Elizabethtown, Pennsylvania, no longer exists, but rest in peace to that horrible theater. It was
Right?
not great.
I mean, but it's so sad to know that some of those are gone. Especially like even if you're like that
Oh
wasn't a
my
great
gosh.
movie theater, it's still sad, like
It is depressing in a way to me because I was also home last week for a different thing, and so I currently live in Florida, but originally grew up in Central Pennsylvania, and
yeah,
was back home last week, and several of the other theaters that I frequented. Lebanon Regal Cinema is no longer there. Hershey's Cocoplex is no longer there as well. And I was like, where do people go for the cinema? This is an important art form. We're losing it.
yeah,
We're losing it. A
yeah,
cinema is a place, and I'm going to get on my soapbox here, where you can get exposed to a variety of different cultures and experiences
yeah,
without having to travel to those places. So it's first off that you get exposed to different ideas and just opinions, and it's a safe place by which to engage with those things rather than stumbling across it in some way and then having a more negative reaction to that. Also, it allows us to feel emotions in a safe environment, right? So that when we are feeling sad or lonely or depressed, it kind of helps us to like ground us in like, okay, I know this person went through that, I watched that movie. And in a way, at least for me, that helps me overcome some of those emotions, or at least I get to like experience those, like in a way microdosing those emotions.
yeah,
And that I think helps me be a better person because I go to the movies and I watch movies and I engage with the art that's presented with me. So that's why it makes me sad that those aren't, if you didn't go, then they didn't go. But for people to at least have the option to go and see those movies,
yeah.
any film that's coming out, or just to support art and different cultures and celebrate
Yeah,
that.
and with
It's
your
sad.
family too. A lot of movies, like, I mean, I know a lot of people, if you go with your family to watch it, and that sometimes can bring up opportunities to like talk about things with your
Yes,
family.
yes, it's a
Like,
conversation starter.
yeah, like with my parents, like we were very open. We talked about everything pretty much,
Yeah.
and so, talking about Anakin falling and Padme, you know, not living through everything
Hmm.
or Vader being able to come back to the light. Those kind of conversations were conversations that I had with my family. And
It
I
should. Yeah.
was able to process a lot of things about people and about people making
Mm,
mistakes and about people making horrible decisions or good decisions or how that can change, your life or affect other people.
yeah.
I was able to do that by going to the theater and watching movies and being able to discuss it,
Yeah.
with my parents after.
100%
So,
agree. Like,
yeah.
I
Yeah.
think one of the best things that I always experience, similar to that, is like the going out to eat afterwards
Yeah.
of the movie, and then chatting about it afterwards. It's such a fun like part of the ritual, or even eating beforehand and then being like so excited about it. Like, I can't wait to see this. We're out and we're gonna see this movie here, or the adverse. I think that's also a great thing, and I think it's awesome that you're able to chat through and like you said, process through the variety of emotions that this film raises. And there's a lot of harsh and like
Yeah.
you said, like yeah, decisions made perhaps in good faith, but the wrong choice ultimately, right? The seduction of it all, and what would we do in Anakin's shoes, right? You're learning empathy here by watching this movie and by engaging with it and by having a conversation with your folks and your friends and all of that. And that's why this film, I think, lingers and holds up so well, is because it does make us ask questions, and it's not just your typical run of the mill popcorn blockbuster that you see it once and you're like, I had a good time with that, that was fun. But at the end of the day, you're like, oh wow, like here's a story about a person that is feels like he's pushed into a corner, and the only person that is like offering a solution for his problems is literally the devil incarnate. And he's like, hey, if you do this for me, dangles the fruit in front of him. He's like, do this for me, do these bad things, and I'll do whatever you want, or like I'll help you achieve the things you're looking for. When in reality, it's like, oh, he's giving a simple solution to a complex problem, and complex problems have complex solutions. So like we're just trusting the scripter here along the way. But when you're pushed into a corner, that's what makes people do things out of desperation, like Anakin
Yeah.
does in this movie. So it's like, I'm glad that you're thinking more critically about this, and I think a lot of the people that were against the prequels back in the day were giving it the light of day.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like, I think Star Wars, and it's one of the reasons, not one of the reasons. I mean, it's kind of one of the reasons for my podcast, but like one of the things that I've always loved about Star Wars
Hmm.
is the questions it makes you ask yourself.
Yeah.
What are my limits? What are the limits that
Mm.
I would go
Mm.
to would I sacrifice part of who I am and what I believe in to help someone else if that's
Mm.
what I was promised?
Yeah.
What people around you are struggling and need help, but they might not have what they need. Like
Right.
people talk about Anakin didn't need a brother, he needed a father.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
so when Palpatine steps in kind of almost as a father figure, he was providing something that Obi-Wan never could, that Qui-Gon could have
Yeah.
provided.
Yeah.
And so while Obi-Wan, I think, did the best that he could with what he was given and in the situation, I mean, could have he done some things differently? Sure. We all can, though. But it shows how sometimes when we do our best, even if it's not perfect, things don't always work out in our favor.
Yeah.
Things don't always happen like we want to the people we love. We can do our best, and people that we love and care for and we try to help can still struggle. They can still
Mhm.
go through hard things. And at the end of
Absolutely.
the day, we see that carrying on to Obi-Wan being like a hermit, and we see it in the show, we see it in everything, how he
Mhm.
struggled with feeling the weight and the guilt of Anakin's fall being his fault, even
Yeah.
though
Yeah.
we know it wasn't. At the end of the day, it's Anakin's choice.
Mhm. He even says it. He owns up to it.
Yeah. Yeah, and so it's one of those things where it's like, okay, who is this is something that I've thought about even as a kid, like, who is an Anakin in my life, right? Like, who is
Oh, nice.
someone
That's a deep
that
thought.
needs something,
Yeah.
who is someone that doesn't maybe have the family that I have, or doesn't
Mhm.
have friends like I have, doesn't have the support, and all they need is that one person pushing them
Yeah.
to do something. I mean, you can go as deep as looking into this is like kind of off the wall, but if you think of like Sith, it's kind of a cult, but you think of like cults, right? And you see these incredibly smart, intelligent, capable people that get pulled into this. And it's like, how did that happen? And what's crazy is sometimes it just takes one person. It
That's it.
just takes one
They
person to
felt a part
validate
of it.
something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. They want belonging. Someone wants belonging. They
And they
want to
offered it.
feel something. And for Anakin, he wanted to save Padme. Is that a bad thing? No. But what can you do? What do you do in
Mhm.
order to get
Mhm.
there? And I don't know. I love how Star Wars ties in. Even, one of my favorite lines in Ahsoka where she says, um, even things done with the best intentions can have the worst consequences.
Absolutely.
And I think at the end of the day, even if you hate to say it because he turns into Vader, I think Anakin had the best intentions. He
Oh,
wanted to,
yeah, he certainly did.
like,
Yeah. It's admirable to wanna save the ones you
yeah,
love, but at what cost? Now that's
right,
the thing.
exactly.
It is,
Yeah,
what is your limit? What is your
yeah,
limit? Is it,
yeah.
I'm willing to kill a bunch of kids."
Yeah,
You know? I
yeah,
don't have a limit here. I'll do whatever must be done. My
you
only
know,
love won't save
yeah,
you, Padme. Only my new powers will. Even
and
though
the
that fruit
sad
gets
thing
dangled
that
and then he
we
never is able
see
to. Yeah.
yeah, and the sad thing that we see through the sequels is it's not even a dark side power.
Yeah. Yeah.
Saving the ones that you love and care about comes from the light side of the Force, and,
Yep.
he
It's a
was
natural
so
thing. Life and
manipulated
yeah.
and so misguided and so consumed by his almost possession of her
Yep.
that
Yep.
he couldn't even save her, which is the wild thing of all of it
The
is
tragedy. Yeah.
yeah, Yeah.
Yeah, you talk about the tragedy of Darth Plagueis. It's really the tragedy of Anakin Skywalker. This is a
Yeah.
Greek tragedy playing out in front of our eyes right here. This space opera fantasy thing that George was like,
Yeah.
that sounds pretty cool. Sounds like Buck Rogers in space. And no, he's like, I'm going to give you this expose on how this good person becomes a fascist.
Yeah. Yeah.
And sends the galaxy into utter darkness and
And
oblivion.
how the good side, how the people that could have helped him were so in their own hubris and
Yep,
dogma
yep.
that they couldn't
In a way, they're
even.
complicit.
Yeah. Yeah.
They
It's
let
so
it happen right
complex.
under
I
their
love
eyes.
it.
It's yeah, you're absolutely right. And that's the ultimate thesis of this trilogy here, and specifically this film too here. Like it's I always am like, who's gonna step up along the way that's gonna like change Anakin or like help him out? And then every step of the way it's Mace Windu being like, I don't trust him. And Obi-Wan being like, you were my brother, and like at the end, I was like, that's it. That's the problem right there. You looked at him as a brother instead of being the dad that he needed all along. Now I get it. You reluctantly took on this kid as your Padawan back in the day when your dying master's in your arms, and you're like, sure, I'll do it. Yes, and but he never
Yeah.
fully committed, in my opinion, to being the dad that he needed to be, and was like still towing that line there all the way up to
Yeah.
the end of things. Like he still believed that. And then in Kenobi, he reconciles with that failure and moves on from it, thankfully. Um, but yeah, it's always like, oh, Anakin is just, he made his choices, and he owns up to them, I believe, to many degree, throughout the rest of the saga, and of course the suffering that results from the choices of his actions, and he lives through it. Um, but I'm always like, who could have stepped up along the way to say, like, I think of oftentimes the Yoda therapy session, and I'm like, man, everything Yoda says there is right, but it's delivered in the worst way possible. Like that's the last thing that Anakin wants to hear is just like, I don't know, people die and rejoice for it. Like it's okay. It's like
It's kind of like the when people are like, "Oh, but, everything will work out. Everything's
right,
gonna work
yeah.
out."
It's
And
like
you're like,
I don't want a happy ending story. Like I know it's gonna be fine after. I just want to talk through the dark feelings that I have, and it's natural and it's human to feel that, especially when you're in the midst of grieving or loss. Right? He's going through all the stages of like anger and denial,
Yeah.
and bargaining, and he's like, well, what can I do to stop this from happening? And by doing that, he's by all the people that are quote unquote his support group making the wrong, actions and choices and saying the wrong things along the way, that it pushes him to the one guy who's like, hey, I can help save your wife. It's kind of interesting that he taught his apprentice everything he knew before he died himself. And then it's literally as soon as Anakin is like, I pledge myself to your teachings. He's like, well, only one guy has figured this out, but if we work together, we can figure this out. He's already
Yeah.
like walking back his promise here. And then later
Right.
again, he's like, oh, once you take out all the Jedi in the temple and you go to Mustafar and you take out the Separatist leaders, then only then will you be strong enough in the dark side that we
Yeah.
can figure out how to do this. And just keeps moving that goalpost along
Yeah.
before he fully controls Anakin, and then Padme's out of the picture at that point, and then it's just, all right, I got him where I want him, hook, line, and sinker. He's now my number two for all of time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Crazy,
It's
crazy.
it it's hard to know, I think, when you are in that place, like, who is helping and who's manipulating, right?
Yes,
And
yes.
he was so consumed by his desire to save her and to control whether she was gonna die or not, that he couldn't even see,
Hmm.
what was really happening, which is so sad,
Yeah.
honestly.
And it's tough because he's also like conflicted with being a Jedi too at the time. I feel like he just in this mixture of convoluted and complicated things that is going on within him. The dichotomy of being husband and also being Jedi at the same time. I think of like especially when he takes out Mace Windu and he's like, no, he must stand trial. Like he's talking about the Jedi Code here, and he's right about everything. Where he's like, he's an unarmed prisoner, he must stand trial. Like this isn't right what you're doing. And then as soon as Mace starts to wield back his lightsaber and to do that final attack on Palpatine, he's like, no, I need him. He switches
Yeah.
back to that other side there where he like is all in on the I need him to save Padme kind of deal, and that's the only way that it'll work. So it's just like, man, he's just uh, it's tough being Anakin. I don't envy the situation he's in, and he put himself in there, but
Yeah.
um, I know the humanist empathist within me understands like life is tough and life is complicated, and this is just a microcosm of the macrocosm that is life itself. And poor Anakin, I tell you what.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I just wanted to also say too, on my story for watching this for the first time. Uh, it was also my uncle's wedding was the next day in Pittsburgh, which was a 4-hour drive away. So we
Uh-huh.
were getting up early the next morning to then do that 4-hour trek. So it was a very much a big argument in the house to go see it opening night at 7 p.m., knowing full well we'd get home around 10 or 11 and then have to immediately go to bed for that 4 a.m. wake up call to then get in the bus to, no, not the bus, but the van to drive down to Pittsburgh. So it was very much a nice thing that I was able to achieve with my mom letting me get that first viewing, because I was like, I can't not see it. You don't understand. Like if I don't see it, and I won't be a part of the conversation on Monday. Like my
Yes.
friends, I'll be out of the loop. They'll be making fun of me. Like I only got a few friends to begin with, and the ones that like Star Wars, like I want to keep this going.
Yeah.
Don't do this to me. So
Yeah.
eventually I won out, and thankfully we're here 20 years later to chat about it as we are. But Jessica, 20 years later, how does the film hold up for you? You watched it recently? You rewatched it over the years? How
Mhm.
does it do you still hold it in high esteem? Obviously, we're still talking about it, and you think deeply about the themes of it all. I think it holds up for you, but tell me more about what you think about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it just hits a lot harder as an adult when like the stuff that we're talking about,
Mm-hmm.
where I mean, no, we're not facing the same specific situations
Sure,
or
sure.
maybe
Hopefully
have,
not.
you know, um, have people in our life that deal with that. But, it really makes me think of, a lot of people that have, been in military service or
Mm-hmm.
different things like that and how, you know, a lot of people have to make a lot of calls that they don't want to make. And,
Yeah,
a lot of things a lot of us don't understand. We'll never understand that haven't, like I
sure.
haven't served. And so um I have a lot of people in my family who have, so it makes me think about that or people that I know. And so it's like, where do you go to talk to someone about those
Mm,
things? And, while, Anakin is doing these things, like who is he supposed to talk to about these struggles, and all
apparently
this
Yoda.
trauma? Yeah, and that sort of thing. And so I don't know, it's so complex. There's so many things that are going on with these characters. And um, you might know someone who has fought in a war and you might not. And
Hmm.
so you can break it down even if you don't, we're all fighting, as cheesy as it sounds, like, some kind of battle within
Sure,
ourselves.
absolutely.
And mental health has been such a big part of my personal story.
Hmm.
And I know so many people that have, and I know the struggle of not knowing who to talk to, and when you talk to someone dismissing it in a sense of kind of like that Yoda conversation of, well, just be more thankful, or
Yeah,
just,
yeah.
just
Rejoice for
don't,
those that are gone.
yeah, just
Don't miss them.
be
Don't mourn
happy,
them.
flip that switch. You don't have to be depressed, you can just choose not to. And it's like, it's not how it works. So it makes me think about those things a lot, especially as an adult, and kids that are going through things. And if people, I don't know, it just makes me think of a lot of stuff that happens in the world.
Hmm.
And if someone was able to have a friend that could help them, or had someone to listen to them, or had someone that was honest but not dismissive,
Yeah,
would these
yeah.
horrible things happen? And so that's kind of like, as an adult, what I think about a lot when I'm watching the show. And also with loss, if
Hmm.
you think about, like, with Padme, everyone's like, well, she's the weakest character because she died, like her heart, people will say her heart, she died of a heartbreak. Like, what is that? Some people go
Oh,
off on that, and it's like, that happens in real
it's a real
life.
medical condition. It is true.
Yes. Yeah. Like, it's like, a thing with your heart literally breaks, and it literally just stops. And,
Exactly.
you have, like, basically a heart attack type of situation from heartbreak,
Hmm. Hmm.
and, um, I think that speaks a little bit more to the power of her character and how good she was, that the fact that she believed in someone so much, she believed even to where she was dying, she kept saying, "Obi-Wan, there's good in him. There's good in
Yeah.
him."
Yeah.
And you see that even with Leia and with Luke, with Luke saying, "And there's
Hmm.
good in him, I know it." Or with Leia believing in hope, believing in
Yeah.
maybe not goodness in Vader. She did not see that. But
She didn't have the
goodness,
opportunity to see it, though. I'll give her some
yeah,
credit there.
yeah, but the goodness of people, the goodness of the
Yeah.
galaxy, the goodness of hope, of that triumphing in the end. And so that strength that we see in Padme is definitely passed on, to her kids. And um yeah, I mean, it's like it's one of those things where, I mean, could some of the dialogue maybe been as an adult looking back going,
Well,
but it's
it's
one
because
of
I'm
those.
so in love with you.
Yeah.
The love has blinded you. Then I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, this is my argument for all of Star Wars. None of Star Wars, in my opinion, has just like perfect the best dialogue.
Nope.
It's a little campy. It's a little cheesy. It is what it is. And that's just not something I critique as much as other people do. Because if you start critiquing one movie for that, you're gonna
You're gonna
I'm one of
run
those
all
people
day
that
long
it
through
has
this
to be
argument.
100%. So then you've got to do it to everything, and no one's gonna like you critiquing the dialogue of the original movies, and that can be critiqued too. So,
That's right. Laugh it up,
um,
fuzzballs. It could be easily critiqued.
so
Just as
I don't
much
know.
about what are the droid. What about the Wookiees? What about the
Yeah,
droid attack on
exactly.
the Wookiees?
So those are things that I think about as an adult. Just like on a deeper level, and the things
Yeah.
that are going on in the world, how can we do it different, how can we stop this, or how can someone not see this coming? And it's like, well, that's what happens, and so yeah, that's kind of where my mind as an adult goes. And I think it still holds up really well.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think it's still a great movie. I think um the score is incredible. I think the visuals are incredible. I think it's a testament to its time of
Hmm.
of the technology. I think there's a lot of criticism about how it's so much CGI. There was so much blue and green screen, but that was so up and coming and
That's right.
new. And like, if it wasn't for Lucas pushing technology at that time, we wouldn't have things like they
Amen.
were able to do in, at the, similar kind of time frame of Lord of the Rings or other movies that we have nowadays that wouldn't exist if it
Yeah.
wasn't for what Lucas did and for what his team did.
Hmm.
Um, when it came to pushing boundaries and pushing, things being digital and that sort of stuff. And so, I mean, can we look at it from today's view and say something was overused? Sure. But at the same time, at that point in time, it was incredible. It was
That's
groundbreaking. The
right.
fact that they were acting without sets mostly around them.
Just looking around.
Could you imagine like
It'd be tough.
that? Like give them props to the fact that they're in a room with nothing and they're having to imagine what all
Hmm.
this is going to look like and have all these fights and dialogue. And to me, that is more incredible than nitpicking how perfect or not perfect it is.
Absolutely. No, you're 100% on all this, and I will say, um, folks listening at home, a quote that I always glean upon is Jackie Robinson's quote that is, "Life is only important as as the impact it has on other lives." And it sounds like that's almost like a summed up thesis of like how you approach this movie of like how can other people have made a difference along the way, and how you can take that into your own personal life, and how can you be a supporting person, someone that's listening, just a good person, right? I think it's a great method for how we can always be better people in everyday society and in our lives, and ones that we
Yeah.
call family and friends, and yeah, it's Anakin as the example. I think that's brilliant. How you're like, who was the Anakin in my life? Who are the people that I can help along the way to get them out of the darkness or the tragedy that they're facing, and help them to come out on the other side, and see what that is, and just kind of help them heal through that process. I think that's both admirable and an amazing thing that you do personally, and especially through the through the podcast work that you do too. which is so awesome on that front as well. And yeah, I think I'll say it's interesting. I think we've done 4 of these episodes to this point where we've kind of had similar questions asked to all the guests. And I think you're the first person that is like accepted the given answer of Padme's death. To be like she is, you know, she dies of a broken heart, and to rationalize that as yeah, that's a real thing. She saw what Anakin had become, and that's enough to literally tear her heart apart. And like I'm okay with that answer too. So that's why I'm also
Yeah.
saying it's like it's interesting that we're on the same wavelength on that one. And I like that. It's the first time that like, I don't have to rationalize a different answer where it's like, oh, you know, Palpatine was siphoning her energy and taking him out. Or I've also theorized that like who knows what like the droids we're getting the information from the droids here, and they're like, I don't know, we're losing her. And I'm like, okay, maybe the droid doesn't know what like a force choke looks like on a throat or something like that. And you know, ultimately at the end of the day, Padme was so in love with Anakin that it broke her heart to see him become what he'd become.
Yeah.
And even to her dying breath, she is like, I still believe in him.
Yeah.
So I'm all on board with the answer given. You know, it's already a film that's super dark to begin with, and to like, you know, there's killing of kids. The whole Jedi Order is basically taken out. Our main character is literally, you know, all of his limbs and arms are cut off and he's burned alive, and the camera like zooms in on him being burned. So like they don't like hold anything to the imagination. They're like, this is what happens when you make terrible choices, like you live through the suffering and the pain of it all. And then to add like our main character also killed his pregnant spouse, like it's a it's a
I
lot, it's a
mean,
lot in a
it's
dark
like
movie
she
already.
has twins, right?
Yeah.
Which is already a complex, like anyone, if you know anyone or if someone has carried twins, that is a very complex pregnancy when
And
you
she's
have,
ready to pop at
yeah.
Mustafar.
Yeah, and so, like, I mean, was she a little more probably less agitated than in real life? Sure. But she's also been taught since her entire life to be composed and to be
Yes,
together, and
yes,
this is
yes,
someone that she
yes.
loves, you know? And so, I mean, the lack of oxygen that she's gonna receive being
Hmm.
choked with being that
On a
close to
volcanic planet.
term. Yes. It's a lot, and so that alone could have killed her, but I think it's the her broken heart that, and then also, to me, it's a testament that she chose to fight through that in order
Yes,
to have the children, because if
yes,
she had
yes,
died
yes.
before, um, we would have lost Luke and Leia too, you know? And so, but she, I think, held on in a sense. I mean, there are stories of so many people that have lost loved ones, and it's like they hold on until they hear, you know, someone's okay, or they hold
Yes,
on until
yes.
they see someone one more
Mhm,
time or whatever, and then they go. And it's like, how did that happen? I don't know. I don't know how someone, you know, does that, but it's like, I mean, when I lost, I mean, I've talked about this on my podcast. It'll be 2 years in June. I had the fortunate blessing of having what I consider a soul dog, or
uh-huh.
a, you know, a soul animal
Sure,
pet
yeah.
or whatever. And the connection is just on another level. And when he passed,
Mhm,
he, I don't know if I've even shared the full story actually on anything. He had cancer
mhm.
and decided to operate to try to remove the tumor. And sadly,
Oh,
I knew that there was a risk going
yeah.
in, that you don't wake up a dog if it's worse than you think going in.
Mhm.
And sadly, that was what the case was. There was
Ugh,
no way to take this out. So I had to make the hard call of giving permission of letting him pass on
mm,
during that. And when I tell you that broke my body and soul and heart in one
yeah.
moment, the wailing, the I felt bad for the people outside. I've never felt that kind of, and I've lost people. I've gone through
Mhm.
things.
Yeah.
Um and to some people will be like, that's a dog, and I get that. It's not a human, but to me
But it
it
meant
was my
something to
kid,
you. Yeah.
you know. And um multiply that times 5 million of it being not only the person that you love, but your partner, your husband, the
Father of your kids.
father
Oh
of your
yeah.
future children, who not only has done all these horrible things, but has turned into the complete opposite of what you thought that they were,
Mm-hmm.
to the extreme. Um, I had to go to the doctor at some point
Yeah.
because I literally thought I was having heart attacks.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was, I can't remember what the condition is called, but it's basically where you cry so hard that you develop like an inflammation like in your chest, and
Yeah.
sometimes it's over your heart, and it can feel like a heart attack.
Mm-hmm.
And so I know that that kind of stuff is very real. And so I think at that end, she was doing everything she could to deliver the kids and for them
Mm-hmm.
to live.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I don't know. I've even seen like things on like, I don't know if it's TikTok or YouTube, but there's like, I think even gynecologists that have gone through and they have like gone through the science of that.
Yes,
And it is
absolutely.
so plausible for her to die.
But
and
I'm all on board
and
with the given
yeah,
explanation too. Like I think it makes
yeah.
sense.
And for what you're saying too with the droids, and that's where I'm thinking dialogue could have been a little
Sure.
better.
Yeah.
But at the same time, droids are droids, and it's very factual, and it's very, if they don't know why she's dying, if they can't
Mm-hmm.
explain that she's dying from a broken heart, they're not going to be like, "Oh, well, she has cardio blah 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 blah," or whatever.
Right.
Like that's going to take
They
you
didn't even
out
know
of
she
that
had twins
moment.
up until this moment. Like you
Yeah,
can't really trust them.
yeah, it is what it is. We don't know if it was droids that were normally medical. I don't know. I mean, they were in a
That's
medical
also true.
facility, but do they normally deliver babies? We don't
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
So, um, I don't know. Some of that could have been maybe written a little better, but the premise of it, the idea of why she died,
Mm-hmm.
how she died, all of that to me, I don't need an outside explanation. I don't need Palpatine, sucking her life force or whatever. Like, I don't need that kind of stuff. If you've experienced a heartbreak to that
Yeah.
extent of
Yeah.
any kind, I think anyone can understand easily. And if you haven't and you don't understand it, I'm very glad you don't, because it's not
I
fun.
hope you see. I hope you keep it that way because yeah,
Yeah.
it is not an enjoyable experience. Again, it's tough, and I'm
Yeah.
sorry that you had to you personally had to experience that, and I thank you for sharing that very vulnerable story on this podcast here and all that, and um, it's definitely tough, and I'm sorry that you had to go through that, and I'm sorry that people might have might have made you feel otherwise for like experiencing emotion in that moment in time. Like it's tough, um, yeah. Just thanks for opening up like that, and then I think that just is um, a testament to your character and how you're able to take that experience and learn from other things and to move forward with that in the Star Wars story too, and how it helps to maybe for someone to recontextualize the Padme of it all, which
Yeah.
again I'm very much in support of what the Lucas given answer here, and yeah, yeah, the dogs are enjoying this conversation too. So yeah, not to jump to another question here, but
No,
to
you're
segue to
good.
something else.
Sorry.
But
Neighbors, I think.
that is totally fine. I do have an interesting thought here, at least from my experience in watching Revenge of the Sith, and every time that I watch it in the time since this movie. So obviously knowing what was going into it and all that stuff. Um, I'm always like every time I watch it, I'm like, well, I guess what I'm saying is I hope that something happens differently every time I watch this movie.
Ugh,
And
I
I go
know.
into it, I'm like, oh, is
I
this the time that
know.
Anakin is going to choose a different path, or someone's going to connect with him,
Ugh.
and it's going to be different here? And then of course I'm let down every time. But do you have a similar experience perhaps anytime you watch
Yes,
this?
and then you add, like, the final season of Clone Wars to it, and it just,
Oh
like,
yeah,
breaks you all over again. Like,
yeah.
there's some people that I know that have watched it where they pause it and they go back to the Clone Wars and they watch this stuff, like, as it's happening in real time, and I'm like, "That sounds amazing, but I don't wanna rip my heart out even worse."
I'm
Like,
about to rip my heart out just thinking about doing something like that. Like that's a lot. Adding in the Ahsoka of it
ugh,
all too. Like man, look at
ugh.
this. just crushing my
So
heart.
hard.
Get out the mortar, brick and mortar, and just grind it to a.
Yeah, and then knowing that, like, Ahsoka was at the funeral, I mean, it's just
Oh,
like,
even yeah, add that in
"Excuse
too.
me?"
Oh,
It's like taking a wound and just, like, pouring salt in it,
and the fact
It
that she
just
knew
makes
about
it
about
worse.
Anakin and Padme too, and kept it a
Yes,
secret.
yes.
Ugh.
Oh, it's just, but yes, I think every time, "Okay, come on, Anakin. Don't make this choice.
You
Don't go
know,
down that
you
path.
don't do it. Don't do it. You
Don't
can
do
do
it."
it. Figure out a different way. It's possible. Literally,
Yes.
if you stay right there, it's gonna be okay. You
Yes.
by you thinking you have the ability to intervene and force something to happen here, you cause the thing to happen. It's
Yep.
oh man, it's tough. It's tough.
Ugh.
So Revenge of the Sith, being the final chapter of the Star Wars saga at that point that we knew it, it had to fill in all these different gaps. So we're
Yeah.
talking Order 66, the birth of the twins, Anakin versus Obi-Wan, just to name a few, folks. So which reveal heading into the movie were you most looking forward to seeing at the time? And did the answer live up to your expectation that you were hoping to see?
Not to come back to the same thing, but I think for me it was really Padme's fate. I really wanted to
Yeah,
know because, like, I knew, like, and understood that Anakin is going to go to the dark side. He's going to become Darth Vader.
sure, sure.
I wanted to see how that was going to happen. We know that the Jedi get that, there's not really any left. How does that happen?
Hmm.
But for me, a lot of it was, what's going to happen with Padme? Because
Yeah,
again, like I said before, knowing from which, is it's been trying to be explained so many times about Leia remembering her and that sort of thing. But how does that pan out? Does she, escape and have the kids and it, like,
sure.
lives in hiding? What happens? And so that was my biggest thing. And I think a lot of it was like, well, she dies. Like, what does that mean? Like,
Mhm, mhm.
how does that happen? What happens to Leia? We know what happens to Luke, and we kind of know what happens to Leia, but we get all drawn for like a second. We don't get to see it, and it's
Yeah,
gone.
split second.
So
Split second. At least thankfully for Kenobi, we get a lot more Alderaan.
yes, yes. So it's like it's one of those things where I think the biggest thing for me was what happens to Padme.
Mhm.
We know ultimately what that the Jedi are going to be gone, that Anakin's going to be Darth Vader, all of that. That Luke ends up on Tatooine, that
Yep.
Obi-Wan ends up there, that Leia ends up somehow in Alderaan, but what happens to Padme? That
Mhm,
was that
mhm.
was my big thing. So,
Were you like, "Oh, I hope that, like, she's secretly around, like, she's, like, hidden off on some planet, like, doing
like,
something
I
else?"
mean, I didn't want her to die,
Yeah, yeah.
obviously. But then also someone like that, if you think about how involved she was, it's like, how would she not still be around? Like, does she
Mhm.
die later? Like, it would be impossible, I think, for all of that to be started and things to be going on without her speaking out, without her. And she knows who Anakin is, and she knows that Anakin,
Mhm.
what he becomes. And so, I mean, even if she lived, I don't think it would have been for very long
Yeah, I
because
don't
of
think
the
Palpatine was ever
information.
gonna keep her
Yeah.
around.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I don't know. That was my biggest thing. I think my biggest unknown was what was gonna happen to her. So,
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's a big one too, and I think we've talked to length already about how
yeah.
the answer
Oh,
that you're
and the
given is
droids.
good too. Yeah, yeah, the
And
droids.
the droids,
Yeah,
like
what's the deal with that?
C-3PO and R2. Like, how did they end up where they are? And, where does our favorite little duo, like, what are they doing?
Yeah, and like
You know?
C3PO doesn't remember anything. Like had to get that like quick answer in there. Like have the protocol droid's mind wiped. Oh
Yeah.
no.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Fortunately, R2 remembers everything, and then
That little droid.
he's just walking around. He's like, I could tell everybody everything. I know just about everything. Uh, so yeah, I personally, I'm gonna say it again. The Anakin Obi one was the thing I was most looking forward to. It was a scene in the trailers that I was like, man, this I can't wait to see this play out as it does. The prequels are very well known for their incredible fight choreography across the three films, particularly with the Maul Qui-Gon duel. But to see Anakin and Obi Wan, two Jedi and a Sith, at their prime of their physical prowess, and after fighting a war for 3 years using like very versed in lightsaber technology and technique. So the fact that they're having this all-out duel for the fate of the galaxy on this lava planet, like, sign me up. This is awesome, and I
Yeah.
loved it so much that when the DVD came out, and folks, we used to have portable DVD players. You could have at one point in time where if you're doing a road trip and you want to play movies in the back, like you just didn't have a device that you could pull up and stream something. You had to actually have the physical media and a physical player that plugged into the car outlet at the chart to power it up. And I took that into the driveway. My buddy and I literally learned the choreography to that fight sequence. We would go frame by frame when the DVD came out, pause it, learn that sequence. All right, pause, go to the next thing,
Love it.
practice it. So
Yeah.
we had Nerf bats because the plastic ones that you'd buy, the plastic lightsabers that one would buy at like a Kmart or Walmart or anything like that, was definitely very painful if you got hit with them. They were not pleasant to engage in lightsaber combat, folks. So the Nerf bat was very much more appreciative, especially when we're hitting each other as hard as we can with those things. So just fond memories of that, and just having that wonderful afternoon where we learned the whole thing. I couldn't tell you how we did it. I couldn't do it now. I just can't pull off my lightsaber from Galaxy's Edge and have show off my lightsaber skills here. I can't do that. I'm past my prime. But
People have tried to teach me the Obi-Wan, and I don't know. It would take so much practice. I don't know if I
yeah,
can do
yeah, a
it.
lot of time and effort. Definitely. You have when you're 11 and you have all the time in the world, you can figure things out. But as an adult, there's other things. You got to pay bills, got to go to
Yeah.
work. Things get in the
I
way.
mean, at least you have lightsabers now that you can do things like that with, because you were talking about those ones that you would like, the ones, I mean, they still have them
Yes,
now, but
the
you
flip.
swing them out.
Yep.
And the thing about those is if you hit them too hard or if they kind of got messed up, they would be that horrible, like, white plastic, like,
Oh yeah.
bent thing to it or
Uh huh.
discoloration, and then you're like, "Well, now my lightsaber's ruined," you know?
Yep, it was ruined, and then they'd bend easily. Once I got hit pretty hard with those things back in the day.
Yeah. Your
Thankfully,
fingers your
oh my
fingers,
gosh,
like, on the like, when you're holding it, oh, no fun, no
yeah,
fun.
they were yeah, like they weren't the most
Your
comfortable things to
knuckles.
hold on to
Yeah.
either. Like those Obi-Wan lightsabers were pretty hard on the hands. Yeah, yeah. So that one was big for me in this, and I think it was sad seeing Order 66, and to get some of those answers. I was all on board with it already, but that was the thing where I was the most like not in the know about how it was going to play out, or at least how it was executed on screen, and then to see it finally, I was enthralled with it, and it was incredible. Um, so we've talked about the things that we like and we celebrate in this movie, and it's okay, of course, to critique and to like recontextualize things, especially as time has gone on. So in hindsight, would you say, or is there anything perhaps about the film that you would change or that you wish would have been presented differently now, knowing that it's kind of the full product and amidst its place in the greater saga? Is there anything that you would perhaps change?
I think for me, again, not to, go over the same topic over and over and over again. But I wish there was a little bit more of a, I don't know, like, not as much of a plot hole with Leia saying she remembered her
Ah,
mom
sure, sure.
in Return of the Jedi.
Hmm.
Um, you know, I don't know. I don't know. Some of the dialogue over that too, because the fact that people are still arguing about it to this day about if it's believable or not. Um, I wish there was like a woman that could have, at the time, because I know like Carrie Fisher like went over a lot of the scripts for the originals.
Hmm.
And she's someone that I think if she had looked over that, she would have been like, George, we can't like you gotta write
Let it
this a
linger on
little.
her for a little longer.
Yeah, and so I think that maybe a little tweaks in that, different things, maybe could have helped some of that storyline, but um I don't know. I'm not somebody that thinks about a lot of it, just maybe like a few things to that extent, but I kind of wish we had seen maybe a little bit more of I mean, we see, Obi-Wan kind of taking Luke to Tatooine
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and you know all of that. And I mean, we see a little bit about Leia, but you know, I just wish, I kind of wish at the time we had gotten a little bit more Alderaan, just because like
Yeah,
we didn't have
sure.
any, we didn't know that there would have been anything with,
Yeah, you didn't know
you
you get
know,
Kenobi.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So I don't have a lot of notes because I try my best not to, but
Yeah, I think that's smart.
yeah,
You're given what you're given, and like then that's how you like, okay, contextualize this in this certain way. And there's always going to be a book or a comic that comes out that will
yeah,
also recontextualize things in a different way, or try to talk to the things that maybe fans didn't like so much in a certain thing, or just to extrapolate upon something even more. And frankly, we got 7 seasons of Clone Wars too, that really helps to like,
yes.
for all the nitpicks that I saw people have over the years, then they're like, oh, and then Clone Wars came out and then talked about that plot point, and I was like, okay, I don't have a concern about that anymore. um
And you know, honestly, like looking back because of Clone Wars, which I know this like Ahsoka didn't exist. Like the
mhm.
idea of her didn't exist at the
Yeah.
time. But like going back, like if the idea of her did exist, a mention of her, like we wouldn't have to see
Yeah.
her,
Oh, yeah.
but some kind of mention about Ahsoka. Like if I was being super nitpicky and like if I could have anything that I wanted in this movie or in the prequels, it would be some kind of mention or something of
Sure,
Ahsoka, or like
sure.
maybe seeing her walk through the Jedi Temple, or you know, like something little like that that is
Mhm.
just like a nod to her would be cool. Like, but again, like the thought of her didn't really exist at the
It didn't
time.
exist at
So
that time, exactly right.
yeah,
Like, if
yeah,
anything, it was just like a faint, "Well, maybe."
yeah.
Uh, in Jessica's special edition, folks, that's where we get, like, Anakin and
Yes,
Obi-Wan being, like,
yes.
in the opening space battle, like, "Oh, Snips would never appreciate this," or something like that.
Just
Uh,
something.
yeah, something to acknowledge the Ahsoka of it all.
Yeah.
I think that would be cool. I would be all for that.
Like
And
I
again,
wouldn't
it's
probably
tough.
put her
Yeah.
in it because to me,
Yeah, she's off on Mandalore doing all that stuff, and
yeah, and
and
yeah, I don't think it would make sense to like see her in live action in the prequels, especially
mhm.
with like I don't think it would have translated well at the time.
Yeah,
Um,
people don't like, "Who's that?"
yeah, I mean, but just also like it was hard enough doing that for The Mandalorian. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? And people were like, "Oh, well,
Yes.
this doesn't look right, and this doesn't look right," you know? And so I think then it would have been really hard, to put her in there, but, like, yeah, some kind of just, like, nod to Ahsoka in a way, I think would be cool.
Yeah, I'm all for
To
that.
the
That'd be
Jessica the special edition.
yes, yes. But the for the 25th anniversary special edition that comes out, they'll throw something in there. Hopefully, that'd be awesome. Um, I think for me, the only thing that I would add is some of the deleted, or at least the concept of the deleted scenes where Padme is like kind of starting the seeds of the rebellion.
Yes,
I'd
yes, I agree
be
with that too.
I'd be all
Yes,
for
yes.
that, and the reason why I'm not like super mad about the movie anymore not including it is because I'm more mad at Clone Wars for not including it to a larger degree, because like I had that criticism back then, and then they had the ability to insert that into like season 6 or 7 of the Clone Wars and
Yeah,
start sowing those seeds. But then they didn't, so I'm more mad at
yeah.
Clone Wars now for doing that. But I will acknowledge that, like, I'll always take more Padme. I'll never say no to that. And I wish that they would frankly say her name in modern Star Wars. I'm like, is there a moratorium on saying her name? Like, they wouldn't say it. They danced around it in Kenobi a lot, and just like with midichlorian, they're afraid to say it. I'm just say Padme, you cowards. Say it, Padme Amidala, Queen Amidala. Say something to that degree.
Yeah.
Um, I'm all for it. More Padme. Long live Padme.
Yes, yes. I mean, you know, people argue about that too. They're like, she wasn't doing much. I'm like, guys, she was 9 months pregnant with twins. Like,
Yep.
what is
Anybody would
she
be
supposed to
bedridden.
do?
Most people would be bedridden.
You know, like, what?
I'm in bed for 3 days if I got a cold. Like,
And
like
yes, like, she's still a main character, but the main thing, even for all of us that love Padme and would love more of her, is about Anakin and Obi-Wan. You know, like,
yes,
that's
precisely.
the main stuff that's happening in that movie, so, I don't
Uh, yeah, exactly. Well, you're speaking to the choir here. Yes, exactly right, exactly right. Um, and I'd be at fault too if I didn't at least bring up the Maestro John Williams at some point in this
Yes.
conversation. And
Yes.
arguably, at least in my opinion, I think Revenge of the Sith is like a greatest hits of, and then some when it comes to like the score, especially for Star Wars. So, in your opinion, what would you say is your favorite track or musical beat within the movie?
I mean, do I mean just I'm trying to think. I mean, I think it builds so much on like I know Attack of the Clones gets a lot of flack. I enjoy that movie.
Hey, hey, you're in good company here.
Like I enjoy it for what it is, and there's a lot of good things in that movie. It's interesting because I love music and I love John
Hmm.
Williams and his score. And out of the prequels, Phantom Menace and Revenge of the Sith are the two that really stand out for me for
Yeah,
the score
yeah.
and for the like iconic moments of the prequels. Um, so I mean, obviously the fight on Mustafar. I mean the music for that,
It's
it's just like,
iconic.
yeah, it is. It's as iconic as Duel of the Fates.
Arguably more, in my
Like
opinion. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It's just like you can hear that when you see it. Like you
Hmm.
see a picture and you can hear the music, and how he'll tie in different themes into different things, so like when I mean, if I remember correctly, I could be wrong, but isn't like Luke and Leia's like themes kind of tied
Oh
into
yeah.
like when she's giving birth and like how he'll tie in, across the stars into different
Hmm.
stuff. And I don't know. I love that. I love how there's little hints of different themes of different stuff like
Exactly.
throughout. And I don't know. He's so incredible, and Star Wars honestly couldn't be what it is without it. So
He's the special sauce that glues it all together.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's got everything. I mean, that battle of the heroes is the track that plays when
Yeah.
Anakin and Obi-Wan are fighting, and it's like, yeah, exactly that. These are two heroes that are battling it out. I love the chorus that comes out, like the choral aspect of
Yes.
it. I'm like, man, John Williams would have never done this in like 1983. This is truly him at like the peak of his craft and learning out how, like, he's always learning in his work to begin with too, which I think is so cool. And how Duel of the Fates inter interjects within there too. Um, I always found that to be super cool. And yeah, like the original theme trilogy motifs that pop up through this, especially in the end credits, where they're like, here's the throne room sequence, here's Leia's theme in its entirety, but also here's some prequel trilogy themes going out through here because it's like John was like, well, I guess this is the end. I might as well give it my all and just have a great time as this is all happening here. The one story beat that I will say too that I just absolutely adore is the sequence where Anakin and Padme are like staring at each other, but they're not staring at each other. Anakin's just looking out the window and he's looking out to where her apartment is, and then she's looking back at the
Yes,
same
I love
time,
that.
and just like that
Yes.
subtle undertone that's going on in the background that's just very haunting. It's called Padme's Ruminations in the soundtrack, and it's just I get I'll
Yes.
listen to the soundtrack often when I'm working, and when that song comes up, I just like find myself staring out the window too, and I'm just contemplating my entire life and the choices I'm about to make. And it's frankly in that moment where Anakin decides, okay, I'm going to go to the Chancellor's office and I'm going to intervene in this, and I have to do what must be done in order
Yeah.
to save Padme here. I'll do whatever it takes. This is the moment where he does, and he makes that choice, and then it's just, I think it's just incredible, and the music does all the talking in the scene, and it says so much without saying anything at all, which I
Yeah.
think is just incredible.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that too. That's a great moment too, for sure.
Yeah, John
For sure.
Williams stepping it up, and even
I
I think
know.
he's what 75, 80 at the point where he's writing this, and man, keep it going, John, keep it going. All right, Jessica, we're at the last question here. So I just want to use this time to conclude with any of the favorite moments that you have in the movie or things we haven't talked about yet. So feel free to list as many as you like. What are some of your favorite moments in this movie? Perhaps things we haven't talked about yet.
Man, I feel like I'm such a talker. I feel like I've already talked about so much. I do think one moment maybe we haven't talked about that
Hmm.
always has kind of stood out to me a little bit is you know, Anakin handling becoming a father and how he's like excited
Yeah,
about it.
yeah.
Um and knowing like Padme's reservation, like it's kind of like, well, the gig's up. Everyone's gonna know, and he's kind of like,
You're gonna be
well,
expelled. I'll probably not be a senator anymore. We'll figure this out. And he's like, all right.
yeah. And I think we talk about a lot of, like, red flags, right?
Yeah.
A lot of red flags with Anakin. But I think he did have a few green flags.
Is this
And
a green flag?
I feel like one of them was, like, in her, like, fear and her being, like, nervous about everything that's gonna change and the fact
Hmm.
that we can't hide this anymore. We see him kind of be supportive in a moment of, like, it's
Very
gonna be
much so.
okay,
Yeah.
like, we're gonna have a family, we're gonna have kids, like, this is exciting. And, like, was he a little delulu? Was he a little delusional? Yes. Um,
Yeah,
but we
he
do
is.
kinda see an old moment of Anakin, just, like, his love for her, and it's in a pure form kind of come out
Hmm.
of the excitement of that. And I feel like that kind of doesn't get talked about a lot. And I don't know, like, it's an interesting thing. And then again, the juxtaposition of that, and then him, like, force choking her, like, at the end, it's
And
like,
killing kids
whoa.
too, right? Like being so happy to being a dad to then killing kids.
Yeah, it's like, whoa. And then that, and then all of that, like, where did that, it's just crazy to see, in that, what, 3 hours, or almost 3 hours
Hmm.
of one extreme to the
Yeah, you have
next,
both parallels.
yeah. Yeah, it's wild. But that's an interesting kind of, like, sweet, a little delusional, but a
Yes.
little naive, but a kind of a sweet Anakin Padme moment that
Right.
I don't think always gets touched on,
I don't think it does either. And for a film that is like has very few happy moments. It
Yeah.
is a happy moment where they're like, hey, like she does have that trepidation of like, hey, I'm kind of pregnant. And then he's like, what? Oh, this is awesome. Like it takes him a second to realize the gravity of what's just taken on. And he's like, oh no, this is awesome. This is great. Doesn't fully think through the ramifications of what that could mean possibly in that moment in time. But he's like, we'll figure it out on the fly. Versus she's like, I should go to the lake house and start prepping things. And he's just
Yeah.
still in like this like honeymoon phase kind of thing where he's like,
Yeah, it's
I
like
love it. This is great.
yeah, you see kind of the moment of, like, what it could be if it was just them.
Yeah. Oh,
Like, what
the
it could be
tragedy.
if they didn't have the pressures of everything that was going on, and they
Hmm.
were allowed to have a relationship, and they were allowed to have a healthy relationship, like,
Hmm.
what it could look like. And it's so sad to see how quickly that gets, like, his excitement, and his, like, childlike excitement, in a sense of wonder of being a dad. And it takes you back to, like, little Anakin going, "Are you an angel?" Like,
Yeah.
it's just like,
Yeah.
and it's so devastating to see that, and what the trauma that he has gone through, that does not justify any of his actions. Like,
Hmm. Hmm.
trauma and things happening to us does not justify us treating people poorly, or,
Amen.
what he does. But the empathy, right?
Gives
It
you
just, it
context.
makes
Yeah.
even more heartbreaking, I
It really
think,
does. It really does. You're
so,
like, man, I'm pulling for
like,
these.
thanks, George. Thanks, George. Thanks, George, for adding that in, and then being like,
That's
"Oh,
right.
and then now he's gonna do all these other things after that."
That's right.
So,
From all that to then Mass of Skywalker, there's too many of them. What are we going to do?
yeah.
Lightsaber ignites. Like,
Yeah.
oh well, we're
Mhm,
going there.
mhm.
We're going there in
Thanks,
this.
George.
Thanks, George. We're having a blast here. This is great. Close out Revenge of the Sith. I'll tell you what. Um, so yeah, for a film, I always like to conclude this part with some of like my joyous, like stupid things in the movie that I'm like, it just makes me smile every time I see. So like the droids that when Padme's given birth, going like ooh pa, has always been just like, why did they throw that in there? I don't know. This just it doesn't make any
Who
sense, but it makes
knows?
me laugh. It makes me laugh as Padme's dying. Uh, it just yeah, one of those whose idea was it to put that in there? I don't know. They didn't need to have a sound. It could have just been all right. The kids are born and all that. I love another happy landing. All the dialogue
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
between them and the banter. When the ray shields come down and they're like, we're smarter than this, apparently not. Just good stuff there. And it builds up the like that relationship from where they're at the beginning to then ultimately again where I hate you, yeah, you were my
Yeah.
brother, and just being caught up in flame and all that stuff. And then filling out the gaps, right? And I just love how, he's like, I have to get the lightsaber to give to Luke, so he just picks up the lightsaber and puts it in his pocket and then walks away. Um,
As he's, like, burning,
as he's burning,
leaving
he's
you.
like, he looks back and he just sees him over there. And he's like, he's probably gonna die from that. I don't need to take him out.
That has been wild to me too. It's like, that doesn't seem like an Obi-Wan thing, like, to just but it's like, I don't
Yeah,
know. I don't
that's
know.
after him
That
fighting him for like whatever 30 minutes probably with
yeah,
full
I'm just
lightsaber
gonna let
battle.
him sizzle, like, some barbecue, Anakin barbecue, like,
He's like,
I don't know.
let him have his misery and suffering. And in his mind, I think he's like,
Yeah.
he's dead. Like, it's only in Kenobi now that we know that he's like, oh, that's how he figures out that he's not actually dead yet.
Yeah.
And he still survives in this, demon state that he's in. Yeah. Yeah, there's some funny stuff, quirky things along the way that I think really add to this movie too, amidst all the tragedy and the darkness that comes with it. But you get this climactic midpoint of the film, of the series, and then you get like, because of that, in my opinion, it makes A New Hope better, and ultimately, I will say too, it makes Return of the Jedi so much better. Seeing Anakin make that good choice ultimately, right, and it serves to me the ultimate story that is Star Wars, which is, it doesn't matter what we do in life, we can make all the wrong choices, but we can always make the right choice. We always have that ability to be a force for good. We can, choose the right thing, choose the good at the end of the day, and Anakin ultimately does that and helps to bring balance to the Force and save the galaxy from the Emperor, who then returns back inexplicably later on. Uh,
Well,
so
unnatural ways, right? The dark side.
unnatural. Yes, exactly right. I agree entirely.
And
I'm actually in full support of how Palpatine returns, but that's a whole other
yeah,
tirade for a
same.
different day.
Yeah, I know. But one thing I would like to say too, that you talked about as a kid seeing Anakin, right?
Hmm.
In Return of the Jedi, when they did the special editions and everything. And I just want to say too, for like sequel kids out there, what a way for Lucas to be like, you know what? I am the artist, I'm the architect of Star
Yeah.
Wars, right? And this is mine. And I know there's a lot of people that hate that change, and they hate that change of Return of the Jedi, and it being a younger, you know, Anakin, it being Hayden. And George has explained it so many times of, well, that
Yes.
was the last time he was, in the
Yeah. Anakin
light and blah blah
dies
blah.
technically. In his mind, he
Yeah,
dies.
and here's what I want to say to that, which you can dislike it. It is a choice, it's a taste thing, I think,
Yeah.
of I don't mean a taste as in bad taste or good taste. I mean a taste as in preserving something as it was
Sure.
versus changing something.
Yeah.
On the flip side of that, I feel like it really validates prequel kids, and it validates that the
You got that
prequels
right.
were important enough to George that he put something from the prequels in his original masterpieces of Star
Hmm.
Wars. And I don't know, like it's just kind of his little nod and wink to us as kids. And I don't know, like it's the prequels are valid. Like they're even in there. There's prequel Anakin is in OG Star Wars,
That's right.
so
You're 100% right. It's exactly, you center bullseye on that one. I immediately was like, these films have a purpose. They're valid. They have a reason for existing. Right. It was very soon, even in my lifetime, right? I would say even 2004, 2005, where people were already saying things like, "Oh, you don't need to watch uh, Phantom Menace. You can just start with Attack of Clones," or just like, forego them. And they're already talking about Watch Order, and a lot of people are saying, "Hey, you don't need to watch the prequel trilogy." And I'm like, no, 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 they're so important. They're so important, guys. There's a lot of stuff there, and it's important. Trust me. And that's another way that George was like, "Hey, guess what? You're gonna see Hayden Christensen no matter what."
yeah.
Which I think is so
I don't
cool.
know, and for Luke, like, I think to see his dad as his dad,
Hmm.
not what he saw before,
Yes, not
I
this
mean,
frail, like Humpty Dumpty
okay,
egg look
all
like guy.
respect to I understand being upset that, like, I don't know, the family of the actor was really upset that,
Hmm.
that it was taken out, and I get that, I get all of it. But guess what? The internet lives. You can still see the
That's
original
right. They
version
still
too.
exist. They still exist. You can get the VHS
Yeah.
or the
Yeah.
DVD that still has the
Yeah.
theatrical original release on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's never gone away.
Yeah.
As much as George has tried to get rid of the other versions of the films that have existed, but um, at least canon wise for Disney and Lucasfilm moving forward, it is those special editions, and frankly, it's the 2013 special edition now that's even more with McClunky and all the fun stuff that keeps getting added every time there's a new thing. So you never know. There's a chance that those prequel films could, add the Jessica cut where it's
Yeah.
they throw in a Snips line or something like that,
You
and some
never
more
know.
Padme. You never know.
Who knows what we'll get? Who knows?
Who knows? And when we chat for the 50th anniversary of Revenge of Sith, we'll be talking about all the special editions that have come out over the years and include all the fun stuff. And yeah, that's ultimately where we're going to close up our conversation here today. Jessica, thank you so much for coming on the show and for chatting all things Revenge of the Sith and sharing your experiences, insights, and opinions. It's been awesome. It's been a great chat, I'll tell you that.
Oh, thank
And
you.
where can the folks find you and Tales of the Force if they want to continue the conversation and/or check out your podcast?
Yeah, so all of the handles for the podcast are just Tales of the Force. I just went to WonderCon and I am prepping for Celebration right now.
Nice.
So I do have some episodes, 2 more episodes that I recorded last year that I need to get out. Life has kind of been like no, because work and all the things have been very busy. Um, I would love to do that before Celebration happens, but we'll see how that goes.
Hmm.
But then I'll be gearing up to start recording again, and getting everything back and going. But I have like 20 something episodes that are out right now,
Nice.
currently for people to listen to. Yeah, and if people want to see the video versions, there is a YouTube channel with the video versions of the
Hmm.
episodes as
Hmm.
well, and that is also Tales of the Force. So yeah, that's where people can find me for the podcast, and yeah, a lot to come with that. So thank you for having me on. Thank you for allowing my Wookiees or Ewoks or whatever to
All of
be
the
in the room
above.
with
The Corellian
me.
hounds, I think
Yes,
in
the
Solo
hounds,
they call
which
them.
I will like to say I do love to know that canon in my mind, Corellian hounds are mostly Dobermans, which I have a Doberman,
Ah,
and a
see?
lot of them were Dobermans in those suits. I think there was one that wasn't a Doberman, but most of them were. So, yeah, I have my Corellian hound, and I have my little Wookiee or whatever, Ewok or whatever
Love
you
it.
want to call the
Love it.
fuzzy
Yes.
one. So
All the furry
Max, I
goodness.
used to call him a Wookiee walk. I kind of combined the two.
Oh, so cool.
So Leo's kind of a Wookiee walk too. He's just yeah,
Wookie walk. You should
you
patent
know,
that.
yeah.
Anytime there's a fluffy dog, you're like, oh, the Wookie walk.
It's a Wookiee walk, right?
Oh,
Yeah.
perfect. Perfect. Well, Jessica, thank you so much for coming on the show again. Folks, go check out Tales of the Force. Excellent podcast. And I'm very excited to see your next batch of episodes as well as your adventures in Japan. I can't wait to see how
Yes,
that
I'm
goes.
excited.
Um,
Thank
and
you.
folks, thank you for listening. And we'll, of course, we'll be back next week with a brand new episode in something about the galaxy far, far away. So until then, may the Force be with you and take care.